Anyway, so he was pleased with the college preaching tour. There's an interesting follow-up to that. He was pleased with the college preaching tour, and we talked about that for a while. So I was feeling very good. Prabhupada likes my program, and he gave me a little attention, so I was feeling very happy. Then the next day I went into Prabhupada's room thinking, well, here I am, the college preacher. And I sat in front of Prabhupada, and he didn't really speak to me. He was just doing his business. But there was a young girl, just some innocent girl, brahmacharini, who was changing Prabhupada's flower vases. And apparently with much devotion, so that Prabhupada was watching her and very pleased, smiling, just like a loving grandfather is watching this young girl change the flower vases. And he said to her, "Oh, thank you very much. What is your name?" So that day, Prabhupada didn't have a word for me, but he was rather very pleased by the devotion of this young girl. So in ISKCON, I was the sannyasi, etc., and she was just some innocent girl, but she's the one that pleased Prabhupada at that time, because I was thinking I'm a sannyasi, and she was just an innocent girl serving with much devotion. So I never forgot that lesson also.
Prabhupada liked to eat fairly simply. His, standard fare was for breakfast he had cut fruits. He would often take freshly fried cashew nuts. In India, sometimes we would give him a bowl of puff rice. And maybe just like one small half piece of sandesh. But that was generally it for breakfast. It was very light. For lunch, then he would have the standard rice dal and chapati, and then added to that one wet sabji, one dry sabji, and again maybe a small sweet. That was the basic. Then if the cook was good, then they could add more things to that, but those things must be there. And the chapatis, of course, Prabhupada liked them to be cooked hot. They had to be, fresh off the stove. And he had a little bell on his table. So when you first brought the plate in, there would be one hot chapati there. And then as he finished that one, then he would ring the bell, and then we would immediately puff up another one on the flames and then run in with it.
We were starting this Bulla Card party at that time. So when the inauguration of Bulla Card party that day, I was asked to bring some prasad to offer to Prabhupada to give for all the devotees. So being a stupid South Indian, so I went there and I brought coconut and gur. That's what South Indian prasad is. But these coconuts were not soft, they were very hard. And then the gur was also not good class. So I had a big plate of pieces of coconut and gur. So it was brought in front of Prabhupada, and Prabhupada looked at, what is this? So Lokanath Swami says, this is prasad for, we are starting the Bulla Card today. Oh, Bulla Card. Put his hand there, and he took a piece of coconut and gur, small one, put in his mouth. And he was talking. The talk was about how we go about when we do the Bulla Card party. What do we do? So he was having this on one side, he kept on talking, then he will move it to this side, like this, then to this side, to that side. This way he was keeping it till it all melted and he could actually eat it. So I was feeling very grateful, because I was thinking that I should have asked Lokanath Swami what prasad I should bring. It should have been some sandesh, because naturally this Prabhupada is so old and it's not something that hard should be given to him for eating. And even though it was unfit, he accepted that. Not only accepted that, he kept it in his mouth till he could actually eat it. It was suffering for an old person to do that and talk also at the same time. And he went on explaining things and keeping on changing this from one side to the other side and showing that, look, I have accepted it, and because you've given it with love, so I have taken it.
From Australia we went to New Zealand, so when we got to New Zealand there was nobody available to cook there. So I was, it was my first time. I had to do the whole thing. So I put the cooker on the flame and went back, finished the massage, came back, and everything was totally ruined. I'd left the flame on too high, so all the dal had dried up in the bottom. The rice was like sludge. It had just, disintegrated. And the vegetables were so soft that they just fell apart. And there was nothing else, and there was nobody else there to, to do a quick job of cooking either. So I had to just serve what I had. So when Prabhupada saw it, he was really disappointed. And he said, "What's this?" So I said, "Well, I must have had the flame too high." So Prabhupada said, "You are too dull." He said, "You cannot cook." So that was my first attempt. It was a disaster. And I felt really bad, actually, because prasadam was a very important thing for Prabhupada. His digestive system at that time was very delicate. And of course, traveling around, it was very important that he get consistent, a consistent standard of food. Otherwise, all kinds of physical problems could come about. I remember once in Calcutta when Palika was cooking, and she was about 10 minutes late with his prasadam, and Prabhupada got really angry about it. And he demanded to see her, and she came up, and he really chastised her very strongly. And I hadn't seen him, at least chastise one of his women disciples as strong as that before. And so after he, complained very strongly, then after that he explained, he said, when the appetite comes up, it must be fed, otherwise disease comes. So we had, when I was with him, I regulated the standard for serving the lunch prasadam to 1:30, regardless of when he finished the massage. And so by 1:30, of course, then he expected his prasadam to be there, and that means the thought of eating makes the juices in the stomach begin to flow, and then you have to feed it, otherwise then there's disease. So it was a science, and Prabhupada was aware of that. Apart from that, of course, Prabhupada did have problems in digesting food anyway, so it was very important to give him a good standard of prasadam on a regular basis. But unfortunately, I wasn't very good at it.
A few months after I'd taken sannyas, I was... when you take sannyas, of course, you really have to be very serious about Krishna consciousness, because it's a, especially for a young man, precarious position. So I was trying very hard to be a good sannyasi. I was a young sannyasi trying hard to be Krishna conscious, and then you realize not really Krishna conscious enough. As much, and Prabhupada deserves to be served much better than I felt that I'm serving him. So I was feeling a little bit in that mood, a little unhappy that I'm not serving Prabhupada properly. So, I thought, well, I better eat less, typical young man. I'm sure we all went through that, so I'm not going to eat very much. So I was trying to eat very little for a few days. So one day, we were out in Prabhupada's garden in Los Angeles, and we were coming back. Actually, every day he would come and get me, because I was trying not to impose on Prabhupada, but every day as he would walk down the stairs and go out to his garden, he would stop my little sannyas room, and he would just peek in the door, just walk in, look around, and just walk out and keep going. But of course, that was the signal, and I would immediately jump off my chair and offer obeisance and run after him. So every day he would come and get me like that. So one day we were coming back from the walk, and as we got near the stairway in his quarters, just as they are now in L.A., on the radiator, I don't know, probably it's still not there, there was one of those old radiators there. And on top of it was a typical thing, a paper plate with a big mound of leftover prasadam. I don't know, potatoes or rice, whatever, just a big thing like that. So Prabhupada would stop, put his cane down, looked at it. They turned to me and just said, "Eat that." So much for my austerities. So then I immediately offered obeisances and took the plate and ate it. I was in Prabhupada's room one time when Jadharani came in. Her health was not good, and she told Prabhupada she wanted to fast, and Prabhupada told her, "Don't fast completely, at least take fruit." He said it's not good to fast completely.
Prabhupada explained one of his strategies for making people Krishna conscious was to distribute profuse amounts of prasadam, because basically people are almost like animals, you know, in this way they live. They don't know anything other than their bodies. So he said, at least let them eat prasadam. He said, then that way they'll gradually, he said, then that's also Krishna. And they'll gradually develop an attraction to Krishna simply by eating the prasadam. And then when that develops, then they'll be able to inquire about the philosophy, or they'll be able to understand the philosophy simply by eating prasadam. So he said, this is our program, that we want people to become gradually Krishna conscious. And prasadam distribution was one, you know, very definite, obvious way that they could make some advancement.